The Way of Truth, via Veritatis. A very beautiful, useful, and splendid little treatise. 1743. Now then, dear friend and brother, since up to this day many deceptions have been presented to the simple-minded in the glorious art of Chymia, through many false alchemical writers, whose writings are nothing else than sheer fraud and lies, although to the simple they appear to signify something glorious, so that they give great faith to those lies, and even proceed with the work, thereby bringing themselves into great toil and labor, for what is begun without understanding can come to no praiseworthy end. Therefore you see most of the throngs, who at this present time throw themselves into the glorious art of alchemia, running and chasing straightway after false alchemical processes, thinking they have found therein the true and right art, which is, however, described in books without parables, but instead one finds abundantly a heap of false recipes, devised by deceitful rogues who themselves knew nothing of the truth, and for that reason could write nothing truthful. Thus both reader and writer understood equally little of what belongs to nature, for had the writers known nature, they would not have ventured upon such absurd arrangements and manner of writing. Yes, even with their false sublimations, calcinations, distillations, solutions and coagulations, their fabricated putrefactions and conjunctions, as one daily sees among the unskilled, that they squander all their goods upon false trifling, which happens only through those false books that teach false regimens, which are not at all conformable to nature. With such useless and vain processes the true chymists have nothing to do, rather, they employ the venerable nature herself, as it proceeds in the veins of the earth, according to her manner and way, without solution, coagulation, or putrefaction, which in themselves are entirely senseless and meaningless. But do consider rightly, dear friend, what instruments, such as alembics, flasks, what retorts, circular glasses, sublimation glasses, or various furnaces, various fires, also various materials, are to be found in the veins of the earth, where the metals sprout and grow. Whether nature in the veins of the earth makes use of so many and such various furnaces or glasses, also so many materials, such as vitriol, salt, arsenic, mercury, sulfur, and other rubbish besides, it is needless to recount here, such as the alchemists use nowadays, wasting their money and time with great lack of understanding. They may rightly be called ignorant, since they daily practice alchemia, yet persist in their great trifling with their solutionibus, coagulationibus, distillationibus, putrefactionibus, which are worth nothing, and uselessly squander both money and time. For nature is so plain, and her work carried out in so simple and plain a manner, to what end then all this great trifling and labor, which is reckoned nothing but folly among the true arts? They are also daily blinded by their own sophistry, so that they do not open their eyes better, but remain fast in sophistry, since they must also consume and perish, because they will pursue nothing further than what they have read in their sophistical books. For all their doing is sophistical and not philosophical, therefore they come to no art nor truth. But I say this in truth, as long as you are a lover of lies and not of the philosophical art, the truth will not be revealed to you. Indeed, I myself long persisted and labored in the sophistical regimens, subliming, distilling, calcining, circulating, and spared not many substances, urine, salt, vitriol, alum, borax. Likewise in hair, in blood, in whinstone, also in wine I searched with much labor, in animals, bones, and in all sorts of herbs I exerted myself. Arsenic and mercury with sulfur I tested, all minerals and metals I tried, with all strong waters and lies I attacked them, with dissolving and coagulating. I also busied myself with amalgamating and precipitating, it brought me no joy. In quintessences I had much trust, but therein too I was deceived. Therefore, dear brother, my earnest admonition and command is this: if you wish to set yourself to seek in this glorious art, you should not involve yourself in the sophistical and disorderly regimen of subliming sulfur and mercury, or of dissolving bodies, nor of coagulating spirits, nor have anything to do with their sophistical defenses, for they are of no service to the true art. Moreover, as long as you do not pursue the natural essence of nature, you will indeed remain unroasted. At length you will also come to understand that the art does not arise from fictions and lies. Therefore, if you desire to gain profit, you must entirely abandon all sublimation, calcination, solution and coagulation together with putrefaction, and be willing to be called and to become a beginner, so that the true and right foundation of philosophy may be shown and taught to you, by which there will be pointed out another solution, another coagulation, and another regimen, which is natural, and which also agrees with nature. For just as nature works in the veins of the earth, where the metals grow, so must you suitably follow nature. For you clearly see that nature uses no more than a single substance in her essence, and in that very substance you see all things hidden. This substance requires no other labor than a single true cooking, through which it is gradually raised higher and higher, until its highest degree. From this simple cooking and gradation the subtle sophists have fabricated a solution, coagulation, calcination, putrefaction, sublimation, and even many more fantastic names. Thus from the true, simple essence of that simple cooking they have made and invented quite another essence, and have brought this simple, truthful art into the greatest difficulty, as though such great toil and labor, so much time, and so many expenses were required for it. But they have falsely devised this, out of hatred and envy, so that they might mislead the followers away from the true art and lead them into great poverty, which they can scarcely justify before God, seeing they have little regarded that God says, "Love thy neighbor as thyself." They have trampled truth underfoot, and set lies in its place, adorning them splendidly, and writing great books about them, as though it were some mighty matter to improve metallic nature, whereas it is nothing else than a simple cooking. Then, because you cook, you thereby purify, the substance gives itself into a rotting, in like manner as the grain, when it is sown in the earth, is preserved by the warmth of the sun in the earth, and by the natural rain must first rot and decay before anything new can grow from it. This they have called a putrefaction, also a solution. Thus you also sublimate in the cooking, for the improvement of the substances they have called a sublimation and multiplication, to blind the simple and the ignorant thereby in common fashion. In like manner you also coagulate, as when the moisture in the nature of the fire is altered, so that it can withstand the fire, without being consumed or evaporated, this they call coagulation. In the cooking the philosophers circulate, for therein fire is united with water, so that the fire cannot burn, as we daily see, that water altogether protects against burning, so long as the water is present. Thus also the water, in the cooking, takes on the fire, and unites itself with the fire, so that it becomes altogether a pure fire, and this has therefore by the ancients been called circulatio or conjunctio. Thus you see how from the simple cooking they have invented so many names, and have established the false regimen to the deception of men. But these fourfold names the ancients did not ascribe to this one substance, in order that none might easily recall what it might truly be, from which, and the power of God, such glorious things could be brought forth into work. Evidently, they have called it a viam, i.e., way, by which they understood nothing else than the moisture, which had begun somewhat to unite itself with the fire, and thus was compared with the ego. They also called it our sulfur, which yet is nothing else than the fire that lies hidden in the water or moisture, and is sought from the water until its highest degree, for it has also been called hyle, id est, principium omnium rerum, i.e., the matter, the principle of all things, because all things are first generated out of water and fire. Other names, such as oripigra, arson, marcasite, and the like, do not come from the philosophers, but were invented by idle, ignorant rogues and sophists, who themselves knew nothing of the truth. Therefore you should henceforth renounce the sophists, and do nothing else but follow nature, which requires only a simple cooking, so you will not be deceived. If then you are not too greatly misled, and are willing to reflect a little upon nature, you will without doubt soon be able to recall what indeed the matter is, from which the metallic creatures are generated. Yet you must first rightly learn to recognize metallic nature, why Sol, Luna, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, are all metals, and what their origin is, that they have become metals. You must also without doubt know that all created things are divided into three natures, vegetal, animal, and mineral, and that in these three all things are comprehended. For all herbs, as wood and trees, when they are burned into fire and give off flame, are called vegetal. Therefore all animals, which have life, or whatever is comprised under flesh and blood, are called animal. Finally, all metals and stones, and all other things that cannot give off flame, are mineral, and are reckoned under mineral nature. Thus you now see, dear brother, that all things are divided and comprehended into three different natures. Nevertheless, though they are divided into three different natures, they all have only one single beginning or principium, from which they are set or made. For through different cookings this prima materia is altered in three ways, according to the manner of the cooking, and so this one common substance becomes diverse natures. Therefore I advise you, as before, that you abandon all the sophistical sublimations, solutions, coagulations, and putrefactions of the alchemists, together with all their jugglery of which they make use even to this day, and that you adhere solely to the simplest natural cooking of the right and true substances. This will truly and certainly lead and guide you to the genuine transformation of nature. For nature is attained and perfected by no other thing, nor by any subtler way, than by the natural cooking of the elements alone. For, dear brother, the elements are the sweetest thing, for which the bride gives thanks. Yet still the deceived sophistical alchemists are so clumsy and ignorant that they cannot recall nor comprehend it, but instead busy themselves day by day with so many and diverse substances contrary to nature, which are of no service to the true art, just as though I wished to sow horn, wood, or stone, and yet expected to harvest natural grain therefrom. Yet it is impossible that from all sorts of imagined substances one could make sun and moon, but only from the natural essentia of the natures, from which all things have their beginning, and which thereafter, through different cookings, spread themselves out into different substances. Thus every natural thing in the natures has its own particular cooking. Therefore we must, if we truly desire to come to the art of alchemia, work in the same way as nature accomplishes her work in the veins of the earth. The ancients have also spoken of many colors, first black, then white, citron yellow, finally red, also green and many other colors. But this is nothing else than deceit, whereby they would lead you astray, so that you would take other unnatural paths and thus remain in ignorance. For the ancients were very subtle, and strove earnestly to conduct their speech and sayings with such veiled words, to adorn and embellish them, that the common man might not comprehend what they meant thereby. Therefore I warn you, as a good friend, that you do not allow yourself to be misled or deceived, when they speak of black colors, thinking you must have a black substance, or that the materia in the work must become black, white, and red. Rather, they said black, because the essentia at the beginning unites with the hot corporeal fire, and then the liquor separates from the essentia like a black smoke. This black smoke the ancients called the black raven, but the essentia they called the beak or raven's head. This separation you must observe very carefully. For from this separation the ancient sages were moved to pursue the three natures, vegetal, animal, and mineral, and from it they discovered that the difference of the natures was nothing else but a variation in the cooking within nature. Thereafter they considered these things further, and thought how one might, by means of common fire, naturally come to the aid of those essentiae which are made weakest by nature, so that the essentiae which are now combustible, and their liquors, which the ancients, by way of imperfection, called mercurious, which separate themselves away from the essentia, might be perfected by art. Thus the essentia would be preserved from burning by means of the liquor, and the liquor would not be able to separate from the essentia. This the ancients called our sulfur. For after this union the essentia is no longer vegetal nor animal, but is now through cooking become a mineral essentia. Therefore it is called sulfur, for the essentia is nothing else than an elementary fire, and its liquor, which is preserved from burning, is a true elementary air. Therefore, since the air is by nature warm and moist, it has been called mercurious by the envious. For the air has in itself the nature of fire, and conversely the elementary fire has in itself the nature of air, so that through the union of their like a true conjunctio of these two must take place. These are the corporeal materials, namely fire and water, which are visible to us. These corporeal elements are nothing else but a mixture of the elementa elementarum, by which they may naturally be brought to their highest degree. This gradation is now the true and right alchemia, and outside of this there is none at all. But what the sophists practice today is nothing but the loss of money and time. You should not think that you will obtain a thorough understanding from the sayings of the philosophers. For they were such as would point you to the outward, while concealing the true inward essentia. Indeed, they give you the bran, but from the sifted flour they bake the bread. Consider now, what will you make from the coarse bran? Thus they do with their sayings, directing you to paths which they themselves never intended to walk. Therefore you must separate yourself in due time from such corrupt foundations, else you will make yourself an apostle of lies, bringing yourself and yours into poverty, and besides that, through your poisonous black fumes of sulfur and mercury, and the stench of marcasites and salts with which you occupy yourself, you will draw dangerous sicknesses upon yourself. For all such things are contrary to the true art. It is also greatly to be wondered at, that all those who daily strive after these high gifts of God, and labor hard therein, are nevertheless cast off, so that they persist in their senseless folly, though they plainly see with their own eyes that nothing is accomplished. Behold, what have so many thousands of men, who have tormented themselves with sublimation, solution, coagulation, putrefaction, analysis, circulation, and by the melting of salts, ever accomplished? What have they achieved with their waters, their dissolutions of metals, with tartar, blood, hair, iron, milk, honey, sugar, and various herbs, in the transmutation of metals? Nothing useful, nay, less than nothing. Therefore let these examples be a warning to you, since you see and hear that for so many years past, with their sophistical practices, they have never been able to attain the true and real alchemy, which serves to the improvement or ennobling of the elementary fire. For without this, through its own light or liquor, the fire is not raised and perfected from the first degree unto the last, by which also the imperfect ones are elevated. And this happens for no other reason than that their elementary fire is not perfectly preserved nor united by its liquor. Therefore the elementary fire cannot endure, for its liquor separates itself from its elementary fire through the heat of common fire, and flies off in a white smoke. But the elementary fire itself cannot fly off, but remains with the earth, and must burn with the earth, for its protector has vanished in the white smoke. And this is the whiteness of which the ancients wrote, which follows after the blackness. Hence they said, you must first blacken before you whiten. For from the black we must begin, and alter the black smoke, not, however, that you should take the black smoke itself as your materia, and make it white, that too would be deceit. Therefore I tell you, the sayings of the philosophers are scarcely to be understood by those who are not thoroughly instructed in the natural operations of the natures. And as long as you remain ignorant in nature, and cannot rightly understand what gives the metals their metallicity, you will never be able to come to the true and genuine alchemy. Know well also, dear brother, that by my writing I shall not bring you joy, but rather your heart will be alarmed, for the reason that I so wholly trample underfoot the false sophistical regimen in which you are so firmly rooted, and think it to be a great matter, whereas in truth it is nothing but great folly and fool's play. Nor does it serve to the improvement of metallic natures, but only to the benefit of barbers and bath-keepers, and also of the physicians. So let them play with it, for to them it sometimes comes to use. Thus also Dr. Johann von Bodenstein, whose master was in sophistry, from whence many strange books under the guise of idea have been made, who much boasted himself in alchemy, as though he had spoken truly, yet for the most part it came to nothing. A good sophist, I confess, he was, for all his practice was nothing else than to deal with sophistical regimens, whereby he invented certain preparations, by virtue of the common fire, which were serviceable to him in his trade, as in medicine. Yet these do not belong to the true alchemy, but are utterly contrary to it. Nevertheless, there are to this day many who ascribe to Bodenstein the true alchemy, and think he fully understood all the secrets, though he fell far short of it. To the ignorant it appears marvelous to the eyes, as though a mighty understanding were therein, though to the man of understanding it is a groundless thing. Yet, as the saying goes, for the blind it is well enough. So I will let him be, for since Adam von Bodenstein is no longer among the living, I will not greatly revile him. According to the proverb, de absentibus nil nisi bonum, of the absent, say nothing but good. But this I say, he was a physician, and a good sophist, yet the natural art of alchemy, or the secrets of the natures, he did not rightly understand, as is shown by his own writings. Though it concerns me little, for their boasting can do no harm to themselves, yet it harms the poor simple folk who trust in them, and thereby are led into ruin. To these I write it for their good, that they may know what they must beware of, for deception is great, but truth is simple. If then you would abide by the truth, you must abandon sophistry, with all the labor you have carried on until this very day, and consider only what nature does, and how she labors unto the essentia. Then you will neither fail nor go astray, but will find what you desire, and with little toil. It will also require little labor and expense. For with a subtle and slight cooking the whole matter is accomplished, so that through the cooking there occurs the solution and coagulation of the bodies, and the sublimation together with the putrefaction is altogether ended thereby, of which also the wise have written. Yet some, in place of the true simplest essence, have set up quite another essence, with which they have blinded the whole world, and led many men into great harm. Whether it has been rightly done, I leave to God, who will judge all things. For it would be far better if not so much were written, by which so many men are troubled, who rely only on the sophistically invented processes which they learn in the lying books, and are thereby deceived. If so much had not been written of alchemy, or if it were not still daily written by those ignorant of nature, then today there would be many thousands of men who had experienced the true art, and could well have comprehended it of themselves. But now, in many years, scarcely one can come to the truth, since nearly all lovers of philosophy rely solely upon books and sophistical labors, thinking that the ancients also accomplished it with such grievous toil, for which they are held in great esteem. Yet I say it is not so. For the true art has no need of the crucibles and furnaces which the laborers of our day employ in their way. The old sages themselves did not so work, though in their books they taught somewhat more obscurely, in order to blind the unwise. In this they did not do well, for even those who were perhaps upon the right path could thereby be led into error, unless they were guided otherwise by living teachers, vivos preceptors. But since even the living masters have their bounds prescribed to them, and a limit set, how far and when they may reveal such secret art, lest they be found violators of the seal of divine mysteries and subject to the curse of all the philosophers, it is better to set aside all books and human teachers, and to behold nature alone, to observe her wondrous workings not only in the bringing forth of metals, but also of all plants, to consider her circulation in winter and summer, in spring and autumn, by day and by night, in heat and in warmth, to have them ever before your eyes, and to ponder them. For when you are thoroughly aware from what, and how, nature brings each thing to its growth, blossom, fruit, and perfection, it will not then be difficult for you to lay your hands in accord with nature, and from the materia which nature employs in the hollows of the earth for diverse growths, to direct your own undertaking also into effect, and to accomplish it according to your desire. Therefore I beg you, dear brother, take not my words as displeasure, but interpret them for the best, that I have urged you away from your former labors, and still daily entreat you for alchemy's sake, which I wholly reject and despise. For I do it truly for your good, since I know that no man in the whole world, with such labor as that in which you are engaged, will ever accomplish any good, nor ever attain to the true transformation of the metals which you seek after. Therefore I say to you yet once more, that you must desist from such labor and give me your ear. For I write to you the true truth, which I desire to answer for before God, and there is no need for me to heap more lies upon myself from the world, since already more than enough have been spoken against me by ignorant people, who themselves were blind in the natural works of nature. These allowed themselves to be deceived by false books, and gave themselves to sophistical labors, thereby squandering their wealth and goods, and accomplishing nothing serviceable to the true art. In this they remained as though ensnared in a labyrinth, and wholly despaired of the truth of the art. Thereafter they went further, and began to write as though they had well understood the matter, or had gained great advantage thereby, though indeed they had become nothing more than poor scribblers. For they dissolved until all their money and goods had melted and vanished, they sublimed until their pots and kettles flew up the chimney, they putrefied until their clothes rotted from their bodies, and they calcined until all their wood and coal were turned to ashes. What now, dear brother, is the use and profit they have gained through their heavy toil and labor? Let them be an example to you, that you may turn away from such sophistical work. For it is not the right way to the true art of alchemy, nor to the true natural transmutation of the metals, but, as I said before, it is only a way of sophistry, useful to barbers and bath keepers, for preparing their medicines, whereby they gain their livelihood. And you see also how many ignorant people have thrust themselves into alchemy, shoemakers, tailors, cobblers, even ruined bankrupt merchants and bakers, who torment themselves for years with sublimations, and find nothing serviceable to the transmutation of metals. Then straightway they wish to be great physicians, making much chatter with boastful, high-sounding words, presuming to undertake great matters, and to cure great diseases of which they have no understanding. They ignorantly give quid pro quo, poisons in place of medicines, whereby they send many a man beneath the earth. And all this they must answer for before God, who, unless they desist, will surely punish them severely. But of this enough, for it does not greatly concern me, since the worldly authorities will well know how to punish such boastful, bragging fellows. I write it to you only as a warning, that you may see how clumsily they act in medicine, of which they have no understanding, just as they do likewise in the glorious art of alchemy, presuming to deal with the art, though they do not understand the least drop or smallest point of what the metals are, or whence and of what they are. How then should such poor ignorant people accomplish anything good or useful in the matter, which is altogether impossible? Therefore I tell you truly, so long as you do not thoroughly recognize metallic nature, so long will it be impossible for you to understand the true art of alchemy, or to come to the right and genuine natural transmutation. For understanding must first be present before you can rightly experience the matters. Everything that you seize upon without understanding, in the path toward the true art, is nothing but deceit and sophistry. For this I have kindly warned you, and said that there are many ways leading to deception, but to the right and true art there is only one, where not many hand labors nor great toil are needed. Therefore, dear friend and brother, you should diligently apply yourself day and night to learn rightly to recognize metallic nature, and not to err therein. If you do this, you are already rightly upon the true art, and will learn for yourself what the materia is, and what the right work is, upon which you may well rely. Then you will see how much useless labor you have undertaken, and you will marvel at the great blindness into which you had been placed. Now therefore consider carefully what metallic nature is, and from what causes the metals have become metals. For they have just as well their beginning and origin as all other created things. In like manner, as from the sperm of a man in the mother's womb, through cooking, a child is generated, and also from the egg, through the natural brooding of hens, a young chick is prepared, so also do the metals have a sure substance of which they are born. But not in such a way, dear brother, that you should suppose or remain in the suspicion, just as the false villains have told you, that mercury and sulfur are the first materia of the metals. For in the veins of the earth, where the metals grow, one finds neither mercury nor sulfur. This they have falsely invented as a deception, in place of the true elementary fire, called sulfur, and the liquor, called mercury. Likewise they have called the elementary fire our soul, and the liquor our luna, with which they have led people astray. They have also called them spirit and soul, anima. To the elementary fire they gave the name anima, and to the elementary liquor spiritus, because the elementary things are invisible. Just so are soul and spirit. The soul is an invisible fire, and the spirit is an invisible moisture. Thus they named the outward essential fire and water corpora, since they are visible and tangible, by which the laborers understand the metallic bodies and call them by that name. Yet this is false. For they called them corpora only because the outward water and fire are visible and tangible, whereas the elementary water and fire are invisible and unseen. Therefore let yourself not be led or deceived by the subtle ancients, for they are cunning, and if you are not watchful they will lead you into snares, pointing you to the metallic corpora, while meaning only the metallic essentia. They teach and point to many kinds of matters and substances, though in truth there is but one single true way that serves toward the truth. They teach you many solutions, coagulations, sublimations, calcinations, and putrefactions, which are worth nothing, and which nature, in the veins of the earth where the metals grow, does not use. For the venerable nature does nothing else than preserve the elementary fire, which is exalted and strengthened by its liquor. By this it is changed from one nature into another through a continual cooking. As I have told you before, all things are divided into three natures: vegetal, animal, and mineral. Though these three natures are corporally distinct, yet they are elementary, though hidden, sprung from one single substance. They all have one single root, from which they all spring forth and grow. This has been called by the ancients, to deceive, primarium materiale, or hyle. For it is nothing else than the hidden elementary fire with its liquor, which the ancients also called the radical humor, from which all truly proceeds. For the liquor is the root of all created things. That this moisture, together with its fire, is divided into different natures, comes about by no other means than, as said, through different cookings that take place in nature. One nature is more protected by its elementary fire through its moisture than another. Among these, the vegetal nature is the lowest in cooking, for its essentia easily burns, and the liquor easily separates from the elementary fire through the slightest fire. The animal nature stands in the same condition, for its essentia also easily burns. For this reason, the mineral nature is the highest in cooking, because the metallic liquor is more and better united with the elementary fire through the cooking than are the other two natures named before. For this reason also the metals resist common fire better than the other things comprehended under the vegetal and animal natures. As is plainly seen, when metals are placed in fire, they do not give off such flames as wood does, because its essentia is not so protected with the liquor as the metallic moisture is protected with its essentia, and the union of the liquor with the essentia is not metallic but merely vegetal, which passes away into a black smoke. But after the essentia has come into cooking by nature, it has not remained vegetal, but is now become metallic, and is consumed by common fire in a white smoke. Likewise, as you see when the imperfect metals are melted in the fire, they give off a white smoke. Thus, as the vegetal essentia through natural cooking is changed and transformed from black into white smoke, for the same reason the ancient sages have said, you must blacken before you whiten, then whiten before you redden. But the cooking itself, unforeseen, makes perfect and complete, just as Sol and Luna, the two noble metals, have become perfect through the cooking. Their essentia is wholly united with the liquor, and the two together have become one fire, which the ancients called making red. Therefore I say to you, dear friend and brother, let not the old books, which are so very corruptly written, lead you astray, but learn simply to recognize metallic nature thoroughly, and then you will easily understand the sayings of the ancients. Do not gape about with the other alchemists, who interpret the sayings of the ancients, or merely persuade themselves, that one must take a certain substance, putrefy it and dissolve it until the materia becomes black, then wash it, calcine it, and labor upon it until the blackness passes and it begins to turn white, and then drive the fire upon it, and continue calcining or laboring until the materia becomes red. All this is false, and no true philosophy, but rather true sophistry. Thus all the sayings of the ancient philosophers are now interpreted by the ignorant into a sophistical order, which the ancients indeed were glad of, for they purposely spoke everything in a perverted way, so that no one could rightly interpret or understand what they meant. They knew very well, all of them, about the metals, and often spoke much of mercury and sulfur, but all to mislead. Yet, though the metallic essentia is the true materia, which by natural cooking must be raised from its lowest to its highest degree, in this they have spoken rightly for the understanding, for those who truly comprehend it, yet to the unknowing it has been a deception. For they imagine, and infer from the old books, that it must be taken from the metals, and so torment themselves with labor until it becomes perfect. This is sophistical, and a path gone astray. For the metallic essentia cannot be obtained from perfect metals without destruction. For if one sought to separate it by fire, then the liquor melts away, and the essentia is burned together with the earth. Likewise, if one would seek to separate the essentia of the imperfect metals by strong waters, arsenical water, aqua vitae, or by lies, then the essentia with its liquor would be corrupted by a foreign moisture, which it cannot endure. For the metallic kind admits nothing foreign, nor can it tolerate it, and if anything foreign mingles with the metallic liquor, it has already fallen from its grade, and departed from metallic being, and thus is set into sophistical order, from which you must beware. And if you would seek to separate the metallic essentia by any means from the perfect metals, it is altogether impossible. For the liquor is perfectly protected with its elementary fire, and through cooking has so united itself with the earth, that neither fire nor water can separate it. Even if you attempted to separate it by strong waters, the essentia nevertheless dissolves with the earth, and afterwards coagulates again into the very same form it was before. No moisture can mingle or unite with the perfect metallic moisture or liquor, so as to corrupt or damage it, as happens in the liquors of the imperfect metals. Therefore it is needless for you to trouble or weary yourself much with this, though the essentia with its liquor is in no thing closer to cooking than it is in the metals. For this reason the ancients have said that there is no living sulfur in anything but in the metals. And so they called the metallic liquor living silver. But you need not concern yourself with what names they gave it, it is nothing other than the outspread eagle, that is, the elementary fire with its elementary liquor, as I have said, which must and shall, through natural cooking, be united with its fire until the two are altogether indistinguishable. For the liquor preserves the fire from burning, so that both remain steadfast, and endure together in that fire. This the ancients have called an elixir, which is as much as to say, a cooked fire. In this they spoke rightly, and gave it the proper name. For through cooking is accomplished and fully brought to ripeness what before was raw and uncooked. This fully cooked thing is that which corrects and strips the imperfect metals, because they cannot remain steadfast before the fire. Therefore let it not weary you to apply diligence in cooking. For all the labor, with which the alchemists trouble themselves with so many vessels and contrivances, is accomplished solely through this simple cooking. Through cooking it purifies itself, raises and sublimates itself, dissolves itself, everything takes place through cooking. Therefore my counsel, and also your help, is this: leave aside all other putrefactions, solutions, coagulations, calcinations, or sublimations. For they bring no profit, but only harm, and again lead many a man into ruin, from which you must be well on your guard. For I have written this instruction and opinion to you out of a simple and faithful heart, hoping you will rightly understand my meaning, and also what you should take, that you may accomplish the work and suitably follow nature in the cooking. For I have here explained and described to you clearly and openly the true, simple, and genuine truth, without any fables or parables. And I mean well toward you, so help me God. Yet you must in reading diligently reflect and well consider what I have written to you here. Do not be astonished that I wholly turn you away from the common evil ways. For you must set yourself upon quite another path, so as to come to the comprehension of natural truth. Therefore you should earnestly pray and entreat God Almighty, that He may grant and bestow upon you a true philosophical spirit, who may rightly teach you to recognize the light of nature, whereby you may attain to the end which you so ardently desire. First response. Of the FRC, Fraternity of the Rosy Cross, released to some of their adherents. 1. Every man desires by nature great treasures of gold and silver, precious stones and riches, thereby to be esteemed high and great before the world. God has indeed created all these for that very reason, that man might use them and be lord over them, therein to recognize His divine goodness and omnipotence, and to honor and thank Him for it. 2. But each one desires to obtain the same only with good days, little toil, without danger and labor. Yet where God has laid them, where one ought to seek them, where He has also promised to give them, there no one will dig nor search. 3. Thus, by reason of long time, the place and the way thereto have become almost unknown to men, and hidden from the greater part, so that to attain it is now difficult, toilsome, and dangerous, though not altogether impossible. 4. But when God, from His great houses, would conceal nothing from us, but in these latter days, before the last judgment begins, will reveal it to the worthy, as Christ Himself has spoken somewhat darkly, that the unworthy should not understand it, saying, There shall be nothing hidden. So we are moved by the Spirit of God to proclaim this will of the Lord to the world. And this has indeed been done and published by us in diverse tongues everywhere. Yet of this greatest of houses it has been either ill received and accepted, or utterly despised, and sought of us without God. For men imagine that the gold should be boiled up for them by alchemical art, or should quickly run into their hands as great treasure, and be shared by us, as though they were eager only for pomp, pride, war, gluttony, drunkenness, whoredom, usury, and other sins. But they should rather have taken an example from those 10 virgins, where the 5 foolish sought oil from the 5 wise, and learned that it must be obtained in quite another way, through each one's own diligence and zeal, through and in God. 5. For such men's disposition we soon discern, both by divine revelation and by their own writings. Therefore our ears are stopped as with a cloud against their blowing and crying only after perishable gold, and we let them cry in vain. Out of this is born much wretchedness and shameful abuse, of which there is now no need to speak, against us, which God will in due time know how to avenge. 6. Therefore your diligence and zeal, which you direct toward the true knowledge of God and the teaching of the Holy Scripture, has long since, though hidden from you, been recognized from your writings. Thus we have judged you, before many thousands, worthy of this answer. And so learn, by divine permission and by the admonition of the Holy Spirit, this. There lies in the midst of the earth, or centro mundi, a mountain, which is small and great, mild and soft, yet beyond measure stony and hard, near to each man, and yet far, but invisible by the counsel of God. 7. In this mountain lie hidden the greatest treasures, which the whole world is not able to pay for. Yet it is, out of envy of the devil, who is ever opposed to God's honor and man's blessedness, surrounded and beset with many fierce beasts and birds of prey, which make the way, already very dark of itself, exceedingly dangerous. For this reason, until now, because the time was not yet come, it has neither been sought nor found. But now it must be found by the worthy, though no one can come to it without great diligence and labor. 8. To this mountain you must go by night, namely when the night is longest and darkest. Therefore prepare yourself thereto with devout prayer, disposed and ready from the heart. Ask no man the way by which the mountain is to be reached and found, but confidently follow the doctor or teacher who will be with you and will meet you upon the way, and whom you will rightly recognize. He will bring you about the middle of the night, when all is still and at rest, to the place. But you must arm yourself with a heroic and manly courage, so that you do not tremble or turn back before him who will meet you on the way. Yet you will need no bodily sword or weapons, only call upon God diligently and devoutly, and speak faithfully the words which the doctor sets before you. 9. When you then behold the mountain, this is the first wonder sign that will happen beforehand, a mighty wind, which will tear the mountain greatly and shatter the rocks. Further, you will encounter lions and dragons and other horrible beasts, who will rage terribly and cruelly against you. But fear not, stand firm and turn not back, for your guide who leads you thither will allow no harm to befall you. Yet still the treasure is not uncovered, though it is already very near. 10. Soon after the wind there will follow a great earthquake, which will finally set in order and level all that the wind has left in ruin. But see that you do not look back. 11. Upon the earthquake will then follow a fierce fire, a vein of love, which will consume all earthly matters and at last uncover the treasure. Yet even then you will not be able to behold it. 12. But after all this, and near to the morning, it will become wholly still and delightful, and soon the morning star will arise and break through the morning gloom. Then you will become aware of the great treasure. The chief and greatest part thereof is a very high tincture, with which the whole world, if it were possible, and if it were God's will, and they were worthy of it, could be tinged and changed into the highest gold. 13. Make constant use of this tincture, as your guide will teach you. It will restore you to health and youth, so that you will feel no disease in any of your limbs. 14. With this tincture you will find all the precious stones that are to be found in the world. Yet you shall take nothing of it for yourselves, but be content with that portion which your guide shall share with you. To him you shall always give heartfelt thanks, and diligently beware of using it to make display before the world, or of applying it otherwise in ways displeasing to God. Rather, use it rightly and possess it as though you had nothing. Be moderate, quiet, and withdrawn, and guard yourselves, so far as ever possible, against all sins. Otherwise your brother, the guide, will turn away from you, and you will again lose this blessedness. Take therefore this as a good admonition: whoever misuses this tincture, does not live purely and sincerely before God, and unblameably before the world, the same loses it, and has little hope of ever awakening it again. 15. When you now make yourselves ready for this way, and find a firm peace within, then arise without delay, for he who is appointed by us and chosen to accompany you will join you on the road. You must then make a vow to enter into the fraternity, and steadfastly to remain therein, not to reveal it to any unworthy person without your doctor's permission, to follow him faithfully in all ways, and diligently to do all that he teaches and commands you, turning neither to the right hand nor to the left, but conforming yourselves entirely to him. This you shall and must assure, for your prayer and earnest desire to God has been heard, and you, together with your companions, are counted worthy by God to become partakers of this treasure. Be joyful, confident, and exceedingly careful. Rely not upon yourselves, but upon your guide. Conduct yourselves blamelessly toward him, for he is a worthy person. Do nothing without his will or knowledge. For he will show you, wherever you desire, the way. He will not abandon you, and he will faithfully tell you where our convent is to be found, and give you sufficient instruction concerning our statutes and ordinances, which you must by all means observe. He will also accompany you until all is completed and revealed, until the king takes the kingdom, and the wise man attains his goal and end. O blessed, worthy, and beloved brothers, united with us in one mind, thank God day and night for his grace. Be not foolish, but honor your doctor and dictator, follow him in all that he shall teach you, and never let him depart from you. Wherever you come to him, do not grieve him, lest he turn away from you, and bring an evil report of you. God preserve you. E.D.F.O.C.R. Senior. Second response. Of the B2 of the R.C. 1. I step into the 7 circles of heaven, grasp with my thoughts the highest, and stand with my feet upon the lowest circle. 2. When the moonlight dazzles my eyes, and I stumble, fall, and break a leg, then I make myself a crutch and walk slowly. That is, I give to my inner salt a balm, which heals me again. But when I sweat, a sweet and lovely water flows from my pores, like milk and honey. Then I burn my crutch to pure ashes. When the ashes glow without smoke, then the king's fountain gives forth flames of gold, and pearls fall into the fountain, awakening a darkness over the world, until the moonlight breaks through again and becomes bright. 3. The night is past, the sun gives her light, the days of the Lord draw near, heaven becomes pure fire and sets the whole world aflame. 4. All 4 elements melt away, and a new heaven and earth are born. 5. In these few words is the treasure of the world contained, with which your desire will be fulfilled. 6. This our brotherhood has shared with you freely, without any reward. But appear again at Christmas, at St. Peter's, in our order, and then the BT will also follow you. The end.